the Barnett Shale, natural gas, and ERCOT. Where are they all headed? We talked to an expert to find out on this episode of The Crude Truth.
In 1901, at Spindletop Hill near Beaumont, the future of Texas changed dramatically as, like a fountain of fortune, thousands of barrels of oil burst from the earth towards the sky. Soon, Detroit would be cranking out Model Ts by the millions, and America was on the move, thanks to the black gold being produced in Texas. Now, more than a century later, the vehicles are different, but nothing else has truly changed. Sure, there may be many other alternative energy sources like wind and solar and electric. But let's be honest, America depends on oil and entrepreneurs, and if the USA is truly going to be independent, it has to know the crude truth.
NAPE is a proud sponsor of The Crude Truth. Be sure to register for the NAPE Expo 2024, February 7th through the 9th at the George R. Brown Convention Center in Houston, Texas. Hurry and register today. NAPE, where deals happen.
This episode is brought to you by LFS Chemistry, committed to being good stewards of the environment and providing the tools so you can be too. NAPE Expo, where deals happen. Air Compressor Solutions. When everything is on the line, Air Compressor Solutions is the dependable choice to keep commercial business powered up. Sandstone Group. Exec Crew. Elevate your network, elevate your knowledge. Oil and Gas Workers Association. Pecos Country Operating. Fueling our future.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever the time of the day it is. I cannot thank you again for tuning in for another episode of The Crude Truth. Today, I am just super excited. I almost feel casual in a way, but also very proper today. I have somebody on that has been a mentor of mine now for some time. Somebody that I call and I ask questions about, hey, what do you see going on here? What's going on with natural gas? What do you think ERCOT's going to do? The gentleman that I'm bringing on today, he has been the executive director of the Barnett Shale Energy Education Council. He's the former director of the energy education of the Ralph Lowe Energy Management Program at TCU Energy Institute, and he's currently a professor at Texas Christian University, and also he's got an amazing Substack. My guest today is Dr. Ed Ireland. Doctor, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Oh my gosh, I'm just excited to have you here.
Glad to be here.
Thank you so much for coming back in. And I say back in, you were a guest in the back in the seats a while back here on an episode, and but finally got you here after 2 or 3 reschedules. But we made it. We made it. We got here and we made the long trek to downtown Fort Worth.
You bet.
So, well, thank you so much for coming. For those out there that don't know who you are, I read off a little bit there about what you're doing and what you've done in the past, and I'd like to kind of start there with your time in the Barnett Shale.
Okay. How far back do you want to go?
Well, you were there from like pert near the, I'm going to say from the beginning to the boom to the crash, so to speak, for the Barnett Shale. So, let's just talk about what you did primarily during that whole time.
Well, sure. I'll take one step back and tell you how I ended up in Fort Worth and with the Barnett Shale. I started off my career as a PhD economist, not in energy, but I had always been interested in energy and had expected to be a career professor teaching economics. Yeah. But after a couple of years of teaching economics at Clemson University in South Carolina, and I'm from Texas, but I got displaced temporarily in South Carolina, which I enjoyed. But I was offered a job with a natural gas pipeline company in Houston, United Energy Resources. And I'd always been interested in energy. I'd written about it and jumped at the chance to move to Houston, get back to Texas, and be part of the energy industry. So I started in the natural gas industry, right, and really have been focused on it most of my professional career. And so that led me to, I spent a few years at United Gas Pipeline, and then I decided to go off on my own, and I started an energy consulting company. And that was very successful, and also put me in the right place at the right time when natural gas prices were deregulated in 1978. And now a lot of people don't know that natural gas prices in the United States were totally controlled by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission until 1978. And so that opened up the market. Before that, it was really a controlled market. Prices were set by FERC. Interstate pipelines had to go by the prices that were set. And there was no pipelines were not open for anyone else to transport gas on. That changed starting with 1978. And I was in the consulting business, but I decided, you know what? I can make some money buying gas from producers, transporting it on interstate pipelines, and selling it to end users like utilities. And so I started doing that, and that developed into being a really big business.
Yes.
And so that's how I got into it on the natural gas side. And in doing that, I also started an oil and gas drilling and exploration company.
Yes.
And so I kind of got into all aspects of energy. So that's my brief history of.
And that's, you're being very brief with it. But what I'm enjoying about you and sharing today is that you have just a plethora of experience in the oil and gas industry. And then the fact that you were you have a PhD in economics or economist, that just adds to that portfolio for someone that sits here and looks at what's going on, how the natural gas prices affect what's going on with the dollar, affect what's going on with the economy. So your pedigree, I guess, would be, I'll use that word, that has led you then to basically be part of that Barnett Shale boom. Really was what a heck of a launching pad for you at that time.
Well, it was. I had just my wife and I decided we were going to move back to Texas. I had retired too early, and moved to Florida. Okay. And we were wanting to get back to Texas, and wanted to move to Fort Worth. Yeah. Because one of my boys went to TCU. Right. And we loved Fort Worth and wanted to live here. So we did move back, and right at that time, as I started meeting people here, that's when the Barnett Shale was just starting to develop. That was 2006. Yes. And drilling had been going on 10 years prior to that, but the boom was just starting to get underway in 2006. So I met the right people who were starting the Barnett Shale, what became the Barnett Shale Energy Education Council. And the whole point behind that was it was urban drilling. I mean, people were drilling wells in parking lots of malls. And even though a lot of people in Fort Worth are from Texas and native Texans, they didn't necessarily ever live next door to drilling rigs. Correct. And so this urban drilling was a whole new thing, and people had a lot of questions. So the mayor of Fort Worth had suggested to the companies that were drilling in Fort Worth that they needed to have some kind of a public relations group that could go out and explain to people what's going on and how the business is conducted and the safety record of it and so on. And so I was hired to do that. And it was a great ride for about 10 years. That was a big ride, I would assume, for that 10 years. It was very big because it was new. The urban drilling, and people didn't understand it. They had a lot of questions. And this was all prior to, by the way, the whole idea of natural gas is bad and carbon in the atmosphere and all of that. Early on, the main questions I got were, when do I get my check? That's what I haven't got a check yet, and I signed the lease. And around 2010, that changed. Oh. and it became very environmentally focused with the emphasis on CO2 emissions and all of that. So it was an interesting time, to say the least.
Well, you mentioned there that first of all, I didn't know that you moved to Florida for a little while. And
Yeah, I did. We ran away to Florida for 10 years.
oh man, that's a nice place. It is nice over
Lived
there.
down in South Florida, the Naples area.
Terrible, Dr. Ireland, terrible life. Terrible,
Yeah.
terrible. Thank
Yeah.
goodness. So getting back to it. But you again, you said that 10 years. So you were right there, boom, when the boom started. And then you talk about the environmental leg of it didn't kick off till 2010, 2011. The thing that sticks out physically in my mind is when the environmental stuff is when they started putting up those high, 20 or 30 foot walls around where they were drilling. And then of course, now they have all these other emissions things in place where they're still producing today. I know because there's stuff in my neighborhood that was drilled back in 2000, the early the mid 2000s. And so when did you get started at TCU? I didn't know. Again, same thing. Before I let you answer, I did not know that your son went there first before you went there.
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he graduated from there. So I had one graduate from TCU, one from UT in Austin.
Oh, wow. That's going to be fun.
Yeah, I got ties both places. But it was really almost immediately I met people at TCU.
Okay.
And they wanted to start an energy institute.
Yes.
So I was immediately part of that. I was on the first board of directors of the TCU Energy Institute.
Mm-hmm.
And that put me on campus talking to people. I started getting invited to speak to classes, and was soon invited to come on aboard and teach. So I did.
And now you've been there for what, 50?
Since 2007 on the campus.
Okay.
I started teaching full-time in 2015.
Okay.
Did that for 7 years and then went back to part-time. So I can spend more time writing on Substack.
Well, what a busy schedule, because you didn't finish up at the with the council, the Barnett Council, till after 15. So you were staying super busy there for several
I was
years.
doing both. Yeah, until it was starting to wind down in 2015. The Barnett Shale Energy Education Council was winding down.
Mm-hmm.
Officially disbanded in 2017.
Okay. But no, now you still teach a little bit, because I highlighted in the beginning that you were part of the inception of the energy. It's now like a full blown thing. What is this? Ralph Lowe Energy Institute? But at that time, it was the Ralph Lowe Energy Management. So it was kind of just some classes that would help gear and a certificate at that time.
That's right. It started off as a certificate program because it takes years to start up a new academic program,
Right.
say to be a master's degree. So it started as a certificate, and that got it started. And
Yes.
then it became part of the business school and part of the energy MBA program.
Yes, and right now you got people like Dr. Blunzer over there, and Dr. Tom Singh, who was also on the show here earlier in the
Right.
year.
I got some great people there.
They really do, and what sets you aside from, and I'll use Dr. Tom also, that y'all have that world experience. Like, y'all are not just get out of college and start teaching about oil and gas or energy or things like that. And which now leads me to your Substack, and it's edireland.substack.com. And you have really not only gained an awesome following on that, but your the information that you're talking about and the detail and the examples, they say facts are friendly, and that's what you're providing on a daily basis on your Substack. So I want to kind of touch on that just for a minute there, and what you've been able to do and highlight and kind of talk about that.
Sure. Well, I had to make a transition. Of course, as I say, I grew up, so to speak, as an academic writer.
Mm-hmm.
That's when I started publishing about energy, was early on, and that was for academic journals. That's a whole different thing.
Yes.
And so I had to retrain myself to write. But that had started during the Barnett Shale days, when I was writing a lot of informative articles and editorials for local newspapers. That was really part of my job, and to, again, explain what was going on in the Barnett Shale. So that helped me with the transition, and then Substack really got me focused on writing informative articles that anyone can read and benefit from it. And it's been a great experience. I mean, I've got some really good readers. They make good comments, and they keep you sharp, and it's great. I just really enjoy it.
Well, one thing you talk about on Substack is natural gas. So, let's talk about that. We're still way below $3 an MCF right now, natural gas. We have a war now on natural gas, and I'll use the word war, from this current administration trying to get rid of, the gas burning stoves or the gas burning heaters. Right now with natural gas being less than $3 an MCF and this war on it, why, what an inexpensive form of energy to provide power, and yet we have people poo-pooing on it right now. What are you seeing about that?
Well, my contention is that the powers that be, so to speak, are laser focused on stopping natural gas because it's so good.
Right.
It's such a perfect fuel. Yeah. It is, it's primarily methane, mm-hmm. and it's very clean. It's the cleanest burning fossil fuel. And so it's just, in many ways, a perfect fuel. The rockets that NASA and then Elon Musk have sent into space run on basically natural gas, but hydrogen, mm-hmm. Which is natural gas with just the one carbon molecule stripped out.
Yeah.
So it's very clean burning. It's abundant in the United States. We're
yes.
blessed with all the shale resources, really the largest in the world. And that's how the U.S. became the largest producer of natural gas in the world. Mm-hmm. And now crude oil, all of that was from shales.
Yes. And
we have an abundance of them. So natural gas is abundant, and it's cheap, and it's clean burning.
Yeah.
And that just drives the anti-fossil fuel group people crazy. And the way they have tried or have been successful in many ways dealing with it is to demonize natural gas and to pass laws against it. Mm-hmm. And so building natural gas pipelines, for example, in the United States, yes. has been a very difficult task, because there are groups whose full-time job is to stop pipelines, and they have done it. And in many cases, right. We still have pipelines, and they do get built, but it's a long process. And it's harmed a lot of parts of the country. For example, up in the Northeast, like north of New York State, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Vermont, they have limited pipeline capacity, natural gas pipeline capacity. So when things get really cold in the winter and they need to keep the electricity on, yeah. keep people warm, they burn fuel oil.
Okay.
And coal.
Yes.
So the end result of these pipelines being constrained is to actually increase the carbon footprint in the United States of the electric utilities in some parts of the country. So now I'm getting off being a professor here, but
no, please do.
That is what happened. So, but back to your original question about natural gas, it's abundant and clean and readily available. And so laws have been passed forbidding its use, yeah. which is just crazy. To say you can't have a gas stove, you can't have a gas furnace, yeah. You can't have a gas water heater. That's where we are. All of those laws aren't in place, but they're coming.
They're coming, and and like you just said, this is a clean burning fuel, and in fact, it burns so efficiently. It's one of the top 3 efficient burners. And what I mean by that, for other those out there that don't know, when you produce an energy source, there's some that you can't use, right?
Right.
And I think nuclear is number one, and then they're either number two or number three in that, 50 or 60% of that natural gas is physically used for energy. Is that correct?
That's right. And when it's used in the gaseous form, let's say goes into your house to run your stove or your water heater, that's the highest energy efficiency you can get. When you burn something like natural gas or coal to make electricity and then transmit that electricity to a house, you've lost 50% of the energy.
Right.
So it's much more energy efficient and cleaner to use natural gas directly
As a
than it
gas.
is as electricity.
Okay.
But that's, electrify everything is the current movement.
So we'll then use more natural gas to produce electricity than we would to just burn it. Because, natural gas can be in a solid, liquid, or gas.
Mm-hmm.
And the most efficient way to do it is actually use it in a gas state.
Right.
What an upside.
Oh, it's crazy. It's craziness. It's crazy town.
This is not on natural gas, but I saw, and I can't confirm or deny this post, but I saw a post the other day of a diesel generator providing the electricity for a electric vehicle plug-in. And it said that natural gas or that diesel generator burns 12 gallons of diesel an hour. It takes 3 hours to get a full charge on that electric vehicle that'll go 200 miles. So technically it was 36 gallons of diesel for that thing to go 200 miles. I don't see the efficiency there at all, Doctor.
No, it's not, and there are a lot of wrong directions going on right now in energy policy. We'll see.
I want to shoot a curveball at you real quick. As an operator and as an E&P company, for us, right now producing natural gas is nothing more than just a byproduct. We're still going after oil. Here we are over $90 at the day that we record this episode, and so hey, if I get natural gas out of the well, that's great, and I'll sell it downstream. But at $2, less than $3 an MCF, for us to go physically drill for natural gas right now is just not a great thing to do, financially. What dollar amount would you think that, would be a good number to where the economy can continue to thrive, the American people can continue to thrive, and that E&P companies like myself could make a decent dollar at natural gas?
For what price of natural gas?
Yeah.
Probably $5. I mean, I'll just toss out a round number. But what's happened right now to the natural gas price is, again, there's so much natural gas in the shales that it is very abundant. And a lot of the natural gas supply we have coming out in the United States is coming from the Permian Basin.
Yeah.
As you know, is primarily drilled for crude oil.
Yes, sir.
But the associated gas comes up with the oil. Effectively, that means that the cost of producing that natural gas is zero.
Well, yeah.
It was free. You didn't drill for it.
That's
you
true.
drilled for crude oil, and you got some natural gas for free. And so the result of that associated gas price being free means the producers of oil, as you're talking about, that you are, would just need to get rid of it.
Yeah.
And so that means whatever it takes, they'll get rid of it. And that's what keeps the lid on natural gas prices.
When you talk about that, and I want to kind of go back to the Northeast and their crazy rules where they burn oil to keep the houses hot, which is a larger carbon footprint. And here we have a product that's basically just coming out of the ground. It's an ancillary product right now. That's almost the way gasoline was back in the day. They were making kerosene, and gasoline was the cheap byproduct that came. So that being said, the combustible engine in partnership with gasoline just changed the last 100 years, and we have built an entire grid system on that combustible engine and that inexpensive fuel source. People talk about an energy transition, Dr. Ireland. Natural gas, you would think just, if you want to repeat history in a way, natural gas would be the best thing to do to make a true energy transition for the next 100 years, would it not?
It would be. And in fact, natural gas is the fuel that used electricity generation that is keeping all the grids operating. In fact, I just published an article on Substack.
Good, let's go.
That went through that analysis and showed if you go through every electricity grid in the United States, from the all through the East Coast, the West Coast, and in the mid part of the United States, it's been natural gas that has kept the system working, kept the electricity on, because there's an inconvenient truth here about wind and solar, is that wind and solar that's come on like gangbusters in recent years is very destabilizing to electricity grids. Why? The wind doesn't always blow and the sun doesn't always shine. And so when the sun is shining, for example, solar is great. It produces a lot of electricity. But the sun goes down, and then it produces none. And for wind, it's the same. There are many days in Texas when wind is producing 30% or more of the electricity being generated in the state. There are days when it's almost zero because the wind isn't blowing. And that's one thing that happened this last summer, and why ERCOT, our electric grid system, our grid operator, the ERCOT was having a lot of trouble when we had those really hot days when it was 108 and 110.
Yes.
Because on those days, the wind stops blowing. And so wind was dropping off to practically nothing. That left... we have nuclear power in Texas, but not a lot of it. We only have 2 in the state. Each one has 2 reactors. That's all we have. And then we have a few coal mines or coal-fired electric generation that's left. But after that, it's natural gas. And on most days, natural gas is generating somewhere between 40 and 80% of the electricity being generated in the state, because wind and solar take first priority. So if the wind's blowing, wind and solar, if the sun's out, will have first place, so to speak. Then natural gas brings up the rear, balances it out and makes it work. And if when the sun goes down, natural gas comes up and fills in the gap. When the wind slows down, natural gas comes up and fills in the gap. That's true of all electric grids in the United States. And if we didn't have that natural gas, we would be in a world of hurt. We would have many of our power grids in trouble.
Well, I'm glad that you brought up ERCOT, and that is the Electric Reliability Council of Texas. So we'll bring it back home here to the great state of Texas. And, that you have been doing a lot on your edireland.substack.com, talking about ERCOT and the reliability. And, during our little pre-meeting, you were like, well, some people are, kind of like, well, what about the reliability? And here I'm saying, people are saying, well, we almost lost power today. It's like, we almost did, but we haven't. In that, has ERCOT actually learned its lesson from last year and the previous year when we were doing those brownouts or blackouts all throughout the state of Texas? Or
Yeah, I think ERCOT's learned a lot. I think they've learned that they had overestimated the capability of wind and solar, that it's, I think, more highly variable than they had expected in their models. And so they've adjusted for that. And a lot of people talk about battery storage, and that's coming up in Texas. And I mean, it's increasing.
Yes.
We have quite a bit of battery storage. And of course, all of these generating mechanisms, wind, solar, natural gas, batteries, all of that in Texas is part of the free market. These are companies that are generating electricity with these sources. So ERCOT doesn't put in batteries. Private companies put in batteries. Private companies build natural gas generation, et cetera. And so it's an open market situation. It's a beautiful thing for an economist to watch actually work. It's a free market in electricity generation. And I think ERCOT's learned a lot, and they've developed new tools, new ways of dispatching electricity through different types of generation by getting some very short-term pricing mechanisms in place so that, and it's really natural gas mainly, that can come online in minutes. So if ERCOT says we have wind has dropped, what are we going to do? We need more generation. Natural gas has some tools they can use, certain types of generators that can come online within minutes and provide the stabilizing electricity that's needed to keep the grid operating.
I just hope, that they have, like you said, because I agree. I do think that they have learned their lessons. And sometimes you'll do posts on LinkedIn that show, hey, you've got natural gas at 60%, while you see wind and solar at less than 10%. And then the nuclear, because we do have some nuclear here, and that's usually pretty small also. But I mean, natural gas is really kind of a way for the future. And now I want to, as we're running out of time here, I do want to kind of transition real quick. And I want to throw out a quick one more curveball question for you. Okay. And I want you to give me the crude truth, Dr. Harlan.
You bet.
We hit $100 oil. How long do you think we stay at $100 oil?
$100 has been per barrel, has been the dividing line for quite a few decades between doable and problematic for the economy. So it's over $100 has typically means the economy starts to slow down, because the price of energy determines the price of everything.
Yes, sir.
Everything is either made out of oil and gas, transported by oil and gas, stored in refrigeration or whatever by oil and gas. So it determines the price of everything. So when oil prices had typically gotten over $100 a barrel, that means inflation starts to heat up, all prices start going up. People's $5 a gallon gasoline has been another one of those sort of magic marks. When it gets close to 5 and over 5, people are in a world of hurt. They can't afford to drive to work, etc. So the short answer to your question is $100 a barrel has kind of been it. A lot of producers over time, say in the recent decade, have said, if you ask them what's the perfect price of oil, they'd say, about $80, $70, because we can make money and it doesn't drag the economy down. And so I think that has been true for years and still is. So if it stays over 100, things start to slow down in the economy.
Well, and then one other thing I do want to bring up, that a few years ago when you and I first got to meet, you were doing a presentation and you talk about the happy median right now is $75, $80 oil. And I agree that you did this wonderful presentation, and I think you need to do it again. I really do. But maybe that's something we could talk about. But the whole point to that was when you took in inflation, the value of a dollar, and just the overall economy over the last 100 years, the average price of oil has always been just above $41 a barrel.
That's right.
And that is the perfect break even, if you ask me, as an E&P company, if I can do that. Now today, definitely, I'm not doing it today, but that's a heck of a great goal to do. So I just wanted to kind of highlight that also, that you've done some great presentations in the past, and that one, again, the first time I met you, it's really stuck out. So thank you very much.
Well, good. Yeah, I developed a historical graph about that. If you adjust for inflation and everything else, it's somewhere around $40 to $45. It has always been a kind of a sweet spot. That's where producers can make money. Mm-hmm. They'd like to make more, but they can be in business. Yeah. But you get up to 80 or 100, then it turns around the other way, and the economy starts to suffer.
Well, Dr. Allen, we're running out of time. So for those out there that have not connected with you, how can they reach out, whether it's a speaking engagement or something to ask you questions about what's going on with natural gas or ERCOT? How can people reach out to you today?
Well, on Substack, you can always reach me there. You can sign up. My publication has a free option, so you can read it, sign up for free, and send me email there, or just my TCU e.ireland@tcu.edu. Will get me the email. So,
and the class that you're teaching right now is energy and entrepreneurship.
that's right.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a great course. It's a junior, senior level course for undergraduates, and it is, the whole point of it is to explore various forms of energy, and for them as a class final project to write a business plan for a startup energy company, whatever that might be. Could be oil and gas, wind and solar, carbon capture, you name it.
Well, if any of them go into the energy MBA there at TCU, they could almost use that as a blueprint for their field study.
For sure.
I'm just saying. Well, for those out there, again, please check out Dr. Ireland's Substack. It's edireland.substack.com. Dr. Ireland, thank you so much for coming in today. Just again, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we'll see you here on another episode of The Crude Truth.
Again, thank you to our sponsors, LFS Chemistry, NAPE Expo, Air Compressor Solutions, Exec CRUDE, Oil and Gas Workers Association, Pecos Country Operating.
The easiest way to start your own podcast and TV show? Real News Communications Network. Stand out from your competition. Produce streams of high-quality social media content. Become a thought leader in your industry. With RNCN, you get to be the host. We handle everything else. Tour one of our 3 locations in Dallas, Fort Worth, and the Colony. Call 972-402-6333 or visit launchashow.com to find out more.